Thank you so much for being here today. Round 2 for us, because I did record this and recorded it very poorly last time. So we're now back in the studio on your home turf in Melbourne. So thank you for doing this twice.
Thank you. Look, it's good to be here and you're welcome. It's all good.
I'm actually really glad in some ways, because it means that we get to have a second conversation, a third conversation actually, because I came on your podcast initially and just fell a little bit in love with you. And then we did our podcast together, and you've so made the effort to like check in with me and check I'm okay, and just been a really good friend from like the outset of becoming strangers. Do you know what I mean? Like we were like complete strangers, and then now I feel like we're friends. So the universe is bringing us back together, and we're meant to be doing this today. We're going to talk about authenticity, but we're not going to finish there as your superpower, because I remember our conversation last time led us into a different spot, and it was such a bloody good conversation that we're not going to be able to reenact it, because both of us have had too much happen since then. But I'm going to see where we end up. So I'm just going to go, how have you been? What's been going on? Tell me everything since I last spoke to you.
Wow, it's been good. I've been doing more public speaking, more advocacy work, which has been kind of humbling, kind of emotional, kind of rewarding. I've had more people reach out to me as a result of that, some of whom have been affected by some of the issues they saw, trans sibling, or one person in particular who felt that they wanted to come out as which is incredible to me, to have that kind of, this is a stranger to me, just reaching out, having heard me speak. That's amazing to me.
Give the audience a little bit of a soundbite into when you say you're doing public speaking, what you're talking about, and give them an executive summary.
Yeah, look, when I came out, when I affirmed my agenda, I prefer that term actually, when I affirmed my gender 2 years ago now to the workplace.
Is that all it's been?
It's all, yeah, but that was the last brick in a very big wall of social transition that had been happening in the background. So I spent a long time sort of double lifing. But when I did that, I had a lot of coffee, because this is Melbourne, so everyone wanted to have coffee with me and talk, and some of these people had known me for a long time, so it was kind of hard for them to grip. And what I found when I had those conversations was a high level of love, low level of understanding in terms of people's preconceptions about what it is to be trans, people's sort of what seemed to me quite fundamental misunderstandings about that, none of which is their fault, of course. I mean, why would you know this stuff unless you reach around the rhetoric that's in the press, the rhetoric that you see on TikTok and all of that kind of stuff. So that led me to a place where I started to consider whether or not I could speak about it from just a human perspective. It was whether or not I had a platform to talk about what it is to be trans from a human perspective, to talk about the importance of allyship in that context, where that begins and how people can show up. And I stress tested that idea on a few people and got a generally positive response. So from there, started going into, I know a lot of people obviously in the industry, so I've been into a lot of agencies, and I've done maybe, 15, 20 of these things now.
Wow.
And sort of refined it a bit over time, but basically it's a safe space for people to ask me questions. I tell my own story, but through the lens of those things those topics around allyship and the workplace and how people can show up. And it really started from there. And I've sort of, it's not a career as such. It's just something I'm trying to pay forward a little bit, I guess. Because I think if I'd seen someone else like me in my earlier life, I think my life might have been actually quite different, or my struggle might have been quite different. And it's all part of authenticity, I guess. My authenticity is very hard won, and that sort of propelled me a bit, and the opportunity to be authentic and to demonstrate that with people and be vulnerable in those spaces has been something that, I've had the feedback I've had has been incredible, and it's been very humbling, like I say, and very rewarding for me.
And tell me a little bit, take me back there, take me back in time and what that was like for you, because that is a big, we talk on this podcast around difficult conversations all the time and how people are scared of difficult conversations. That would have been a period of your life full of difficult conversations, surely.
The process of coming, yeah. Look, I without giving you my entire life story, getting on for 7 years ago, I was in a place where I had 3 very stark decisions in front of me, having withstood the pressure and conformed and repressed my whole life in one way or another, both with full knowledge of who I am, but also a lot of my life I hadn't come out to myself even, and that's a common theme particularly with trans people who've come out later in life. It took me a long, long time to accept it in myself, and that's, again, a whole other story. But I got to this point where I had 3 decisions, 3 options. I had suicide, I had abandonment, in other words, running away from everyone and going out for a pint of milk and never coming home and eloping to Tahiti or whatever, or I had communication and confrontation and speaking to my family and my loved ones and my children and my parents and my partner and my friends and my acquaintances and my work colleagues about who I am and living my life authentically. And those 3 decisions visited me, and I visited them a lot over a period of a couple of years. And that was probably one of the hardest periods of my life. And spoiler alert, I'm still here. So I chose what I chose, and I chose to live my life authentically. And of course, I've lost a lot. I've lost a lot as a result of that. But it did come down to whether or not I was more use to my children, dead or alive, is what it ultimately came down to. But it also has unlocked me as a person. It's unlocked authenticity in me as a person. It's enabled me to explore that, and so for all the loss, there's been a lot of joy as well. Associated just with being able to be myself in such a fundamental way that was denied to me I denied myself, frankly. This isn't all about other people, it's about me too, for a long, long time.
I was talking to someone on the podcast last week, actually, and we were speaking about the importance of finding yourself and finding your own voice, and like, who are you trying to make proud, like making yourself proud. And when you were just talking then, there was an element of like, you've gone, and I understand the grief of losing other people, but the joy of finding yourself and your own identity, and like it's almost like 2 truths can coexist at once is what I'm hearing.
Yeah, it's a complex thing, right? And it's full of irony. I grieve lost years in my life, but at the same time, had I not taken the decisions I've taken, my children wouldn't exist. And that's like thinking in 4 dimensions. I can't, that doesn't compute. I would never have my children not in the world, but at the same time, I've caused a lot of pain to myself and other people by taking, when I look back, all the signs were there that I was trans. I just didn't have the upbringing, the wherewithal, the courage. It was the wrong time in society, all of these kind of things combined, to take me down certain paths of suppression, control, and that that was profoundly unhealthy. But at the same time, it wasn't all pain and it wasn't all strife. I married someone I genuinely loved. We had good times. It wasn't all pain. I was holding a lot down, but it wasn't all bad. So that's complex. But I also do want to point out that as much as I grieve loss, and I grieve loss of people in my life, they are also grieving me. and the me that used to be, and the me that they signed up to. And I can never really forgive myself for causing them that pain. The hardest challenge I had in those three options I mentioned was that every which way I turned was going to cause someone pain, myself included. And that's why I wrestled with it for so long. It's kind of a profound thing to confront, but it's hugely profound for others around me. And I'm not perfect, not by a long shot, and I made mistakes, but I really did struggle with that. And leveling up the pain I would cause by taking one of those routes versus another.
Do you think you will forgive yourself? Like you just said that you haven't yet.
I don't know. I'm much kinder to myself now than I was. There are some things that I just can't erase that I would love to, and I'm talking about the effect that I've had on other people. I've been quite different, well-meaning friends in the past the past couple of years have sort of, your ex should accept you, or she like, I've been very defensive of that because it's incredibly traumatizing for someone else in that situation. So I can't expect empathy from other people if I don't have empathy myself. And that is part of it. Empathy is a massive part of authenticity for me. So I can't fully reconcile those things. So at the moment, I can't see how I can forgive myself, honestly, fully. But I'm working on it. I'm working on myself. I'm working on what's left in those relationships, and trying slowly to bring some individuals back to me who have been lost for understandable reasons.
I feel like it's really interesting because we're talking about this for the third time, right? And I'm still learning new parts of this. And there's an element of me that's going, that's because you're still learning parts of this, right? Like there's an element of the way you articulate. I imagine you said you've done this like presentation like 20 times, right? But I imagine something different comes out of your mouth every time to some extent, because there's an element of you, like I can see the deep look in your eyes when I asked you, are you ever going to forgive yourself? Like there was a contemplation there that probably wasn't there a year ago or 2 years ago, where you're still on that journey.
Look, I'm certainly, well, part of it's the questions that you ask are very, it's what makes you a good podcaster, frankly. You ask very challenging questions, and I yes, there are set pieces in a presentation you've done 20 times, but you're right. I'll never get asked quite the same question, in quite the same way by any one of the individuals in the room. So yeah, but look, I'm working through. Like I know myself, and I've been around long enough to been, I'm very comfortable in myself now. But working through that sort of relationship with others that have been affected by me is absolutely a learning curve. I had to completely relearn the way I related to my children. I had to recognise that they had to go through what they had to go through. I probably had quite a naive view of how that would play out. It's been incredibly challenging. I think ironically enough, have become a better person for that learning. And I'm still, as they get older and as the things are becoming more normalised over time, that's something that, I'm absolutely still on that journey. I'm not sure that journey's ever going to stop. And I had to go through a period of rawness. In fact, that's probably, versus when we first talked about this, there's layers of scar tissue that probably weren't there before. And that has helped my articulation of some things that I just would have burst into, it's too painful, would have been too painful to talk about. But as that journey goes, I'm slowly people are slowly coming back to me in the ways that they feel they can. And that's as much as I can ask of them.
I think one of the things we spoke about last time, which is really resonating with me in this moment, is we spoke about authenticity being so important to you, and you were a little bit like, you were talking about you were going to speak on a panel, and you were like, I don't really want to be the trans woman on the panel because that's not what I'm representing. I'm representing authenticity. And when we made that connection together, you were like, I feel so much better about being on this panel now, because actually it's not about representing one area of diversity. It's actually kind of accepting everyone's differences, and how do we help everyone step in to their power of being who they truly are. And I think, like, I've been doing this podcast for almost a year now. I see the masks that we're all wearing. So I find your openness around your mask, because your mask is easier to label, right? Like there's an element of like, we're all wearing a mask, but yours is a one where, one, it's hard for people who haven't been through it to understand, but there's a label for it. Whereas I sit here with women in front of me over and over again, where I'm like, you're not being yourself, you're not being you right now. And we have to dig in deep to find that person underneath there. And I think that's one of the things I love about you and what you stand for, is it's not just about the trans world. It's about every woman and how she can be who she wants to be.
I am... I've always been actively trying to say that for all that people ask me about my story, and there is a label for it, and people are interested in it, and I have to talk to struggle, I have always been active in saying, I don't own pain, I don't own struggle, I don't own strife, I don't own masks. Masking your gender, yes, it is kind of profound as masks go. But that doesn't mean some of the other incredible women you've had on this podcast, who've had infertility journeys or menopausal journeys or professional journeys of one kind or another. Like, everyone has to wear these masks. You're absolutely right. And even within the framework of DEI, there are sort of interconnectivities. When I've spoken to some. Like, I've spoken to some Asian Australians, from people of colour, and we've compared experiences, and there are weird kind of like commonalities. But then there are also, one of the things I do when I talk often is talk to male harassment that I've experienced, but then pause and says, right, hands up all the women who've experienced some form of male harassment on public transport or in a car park, or just being leered at in the street or whatever it might be. And of course, all the hands go up, right? I don't own any of that stuff. And I'm very conscious of that. And I'm also very conscious of, part of authenticity to me, and this is where I depart sometimes from the trans community, part of authenticity to me is that there are absolutely differences between trans women and cisgender women. And I might have wished I'd been born differently, but it doesn't change the fact that there are differences in people's experiences, people's physicality, people's way of approaching, and what they've overcome in their life. And that panel, was an embodiment of all of those things that I sort of wanted to sort of communicate and stay away from. And I talk in, when I do the sort of the talks, I do talk to broader application of what I'm saying to other parts of life, and other people. But one other experience I had that I was very conflicted by after we'd had our conversations was being nominated as a finalist in the Women in Media Awards.
Oh, cool.
And I went along and did the, and I didn't win it, but I got put forward, and then I was nominated on a long list, and then I became a finalist, and I was really conflicted about that. Because had I won it, I would have given a short acceptance speech along the lines of, look, I'm incredibly proud to have this award, but me getting this award does not mean that I've had the same fight as every other woman in this building, assuming I'm the only trans woman here, that every other woman in this building. The fact of the matter is I benefited from white male privilege for most of my career. I didn't have worries about whether I'd be made redundant during parental leave. I didn't have people talking over me in the boardroom. I didn't have sexual harassment in the workplace. I didn't, all of this stuff. And I just wanted to make it very clear that, yes, whilst I have been on a journey and whilst, yes, I've done some work to try and generate change in people's understanding of what it is to be trans, that doesn't mean that I'm every woman. There are differences, and that is an important thing for me to communicate. And I was worried about some women, if I'd had won that award, looking askance at that. And that's not about being transphobic at all. That's just about, hang on a minute, she's only been affirmed in the industry 2 years, and suddenly she's a master of change. I mean, come on, that's not actually fair, because there's someone here who's spent 30 years building careers for other younger women coming behind her, type of thing. So I thought about that a lot, and it is an important part of my general message, I'd say.
I love your passion there. You mentioned allyship, because I think there'll be people listening into this. It was quite funny, actually. I was telling my sister that I was interviewing you today. And I was like, I've got Ellie on. And she was like, because my sister's paranoid, right? Even with me, with like dating, anything, she's a worrier. I'm not a worrier, right? So she will literally worry about everything. She's like, don't say the wrong thing. And I said to her, Soph, actually, I said to Ellie last time we had this conversation, I said, Ellie, I'm worried I'm going to say the wrong thing. And Ellie just went, you can't say the wrong thing, Chloe, you're fine. Like, as long as you're curious and inquisitive, like there's no wrong, as long as the intention is pure. There's no wrong thing that you can say. So I just dismissed my sister. I was like, Ellie's a babe, don't worry, like that. Like that.
I'll take babe. Yeah, that works.
Sorry, it's the Essex in me. Essex girls, we're all babes. But there's, I want to talk about that allyship, and I want to talk about that uncomfortability, uncomfortable, whatever the word is, that people feel in terms of saying the wrong thing. Because I feel like last time, I feel so comfortable talking to you now. Like I don't have any, there's zero fear of saying the wrong thing. I just feel so at ease. But I have to remember previous me when we first had this conversation, and I was like, can you say that? How do I word that? Please don't please don't take offense if I say it like this. I want you to speak to those people and just help them with their understanding and what they can do and what allyship looks like.
I think the first thing to say is that allyship, I think it can be quite an intimidating term for some people, partly for what you've just said, but also because it sort of implies activism in some ways, and I don't think you need to be an activist necessarily to be an ally. I think being an ally can show up in just the way you are, the way you turn up, the way you express yourself, the way you are conscious of your own bias and seek to correct that, the way you speak up quietly if you see bigotry in the workplace. I think in a world where global companies are rolling back out of DEI in deference to Donald Trump, there is a groundswell movement that can replace that. No matter what policies your company has, or what initiatives there are, simply being who you are and showing support can happen just in who you are as an individual, turning up and being that sort of cultural foundation in your workplace or in your life or wherever else. You won't necessarily see the effect of that because, if I just dial it right back to my little corner of this, which is being trans, any single person in your work could be trans, and you won't see it necessarily. A lot of people said to me, I've never met a trans person before. What do I do? I'm like, well, you've met me. You met me 10 years ago. You just didn't know. And because of that invisible nature of people who are struggling, like just showing up like that is incredibly important as in terms of allyship, educating yourself and being that person who someone feels enabled and empowered to be themselves around. You will never know the power of that until someone actually does come out, or someone actually does talk to you, or someone actually does feel comfortable expressing their emotion or expressing who they are to you. That's allyship. That's incredibly powerful allyship right there, without having to drape a flag over you or go and lob a brick at the police or take part in a protest or whatever else it might be. But for however much trans people need allies, we also need to be allies to others, and that is all about the safe space. I experience just living my life, going through the streets, being myself, I experience microaggression in some shape or form pretty much every day. It will be someone deliberately misgendering me in a coffee shop. It will be people staring or gawping. It will be pointing. It will be tutting. All of these kind of things, right? So occasionally that'll escalate into aggression and violence. Mostly it's just microaggression. But here's the thing: I can tell when someone's being aggressive to me and when they're not. And in the industry, part of high level of love is the fact that I've not really encountered anyone who's been overtly transphobic or aggressive towards me. I've encountered lots of people who've made mistakes with pronouns. I've encountered lots of people who've got confused with terminology. I've got lots of people who've been treading on their eggshells around me. And part of me saying I want to create these safe spaces is that you don't have to. Because I know you well enough to know that nothing you could say is trying to belittle me. Nothing you say is aggressive. It's just people are hardwired. And I'm not stupid. I mean, I'm not, I look the way I look. I look okay. I look better than I did 10 years ago. And I carry myself with confidence that's hard won. But that doesn't, as soon as I open my mouth, people see it. As soon as people look closely, they see it. I'm not daft. So of course that's going to create some sort of confusion in people. And unless I have empathy for that, and unless I can sort of laugh that off or correct it gently or whatever, what am I doing? I'm just creating more friction and less understanding, and I'm causing people to turn away from it rather than embrace it. And all I want at the end of the day is for trans people to be normalized, so that we're not the topic of these conversations. I'm not the focus of microaggression or whispered comments or heads turning in bars and all of this kind of stuff. In the same way that 30 years ago, being a gay man openly would have caused that kind of consternation in people, and that perhaps it doesn't so much now because we've all moved on, we've all moved forward. But that's because it's become normalized. And that takes time. But without me sort of being open about that and about having empathy for people making mistakes, particularly people who've known me my dad, bless him. He's in his 70s. It's been 3 years and he still makes mistakes, right? And I have to sort of curb there's a natural little, oh, Dad, for God's sake. But then he still loves me. And oh my God, that's the most incredible thing in the world to me. Because the world is littered with trans people who get ostracized from their families and from their careers, right? So I'm incredibly privileged and incredibly lucky. And if the price I have to pay is people making mistakes and me sort of gently correcting over time and until people's neurons are rewired about me, that's not a thing for me to have to deal with. I deal with a whole heap worse just on the street,
You're making me emotional. I love that. I love what you're saying about your family. What advice have you got for anyone listening to this who is going through something similar to what you have been through? Because I'm going to change tact in a minute, because one of the things that was epic about our last interview is that we've covered this quite a lot this time. Like last time, I think we were like, yeah, okay, we've got that. Like, let's move on, because you have so much business wisdom to share. And I actually really want to make sure that I give the audience that side of you as well. But just to wrap this out, like, for anyone that needs to hear what you've got to say, what are your thoughts?
Look, I it's probably looking at it from what I did wrong. It's the easiest way to correct it. Like, so I've fought this without therapy, which I did that because I was scared that if I opened up, too much would fall out of me. Now, that's fundamentally the wrong way to be. People kill themselves over these battles. I was probably lucky that I didn't become a victim of that, right? So, don't be like don't be Ellie. Don't please talk to someone, either professionally or personally. So I'd absolutely be always advocate for that, whether it's therapy, whether it's seeing a doctor, I think that's incredibly important. I think also never underestimate people's capacity to understand. I did for a long time. I just felt they're never going to get it. They're never going to understand. But you know what? The people who don't, they melt away from your life. And ultimately you move on. And the people who really care about you, even if they have an adverse reaction to start with, my experience suggests, will ultimately come back to you if you let them. If you let them go through what they need to go through.
Well, you've been through it yourself, right? Like, you've gone on that journey of understanding for you. So then you've probably got empathy for other people who are going on that journey of understanding.
Yeah, and it's a mistake I made at the start, was to sort of underestimate how much people did need to go through that journey of understanding about me, and unpick that unravel that in their own minds. But in terms of advice, that I'd give to someone else, let people go at their own pace. Don't make it confrontational, and just let people come back to you over time, and just turn up and be there. It's the one thing I've done with my children, and I'm not going to talk about my children in any detail other than to say, that all I could do at the end of the day was still to show them that I could still, that I'm still here for them, still loving them, still providing for them in whatever way I can. And open communication was a really important part of that. I've written them letters. I've reinforced certain messages. So I mean, God, this is a very long way of answering a short question, but honest communication, both with yourself and with your loved ones, is massively important. Letting people have their own journey, massively important. Seeking help, massively important. And knowing that over time it's not an insurmountable wall. It might feel like that, but things do normalize over time. You just need to have patience to give it that time. I hope I've answered that well. I mean, it's a
very hard question.
I could talk for an hour just about this stuff, but I'm trying to sort of crunch it down into the most important things.
You said don't be Ellie, and in my head I was like, no, be more Ellie. And that should actually be a hashtag. Be more Ellie.
Be Ellie now. Don't be Ellie. 10 years ago.
Well, I'm with you on the therapy, because I'm the biggest advocate for therapy. I think like everyone should be in therapy. I feel like we go to the gym to look after our physical health, and when it comes to mental health, like I don't see any stigma personally around therapy. It's changed my life, and it's changed so many people I know's life. So I do agree with you on the advice to people there, because I will never not support people seeing a psychologist, because I genuinely have seen the impact that it's had on me and others. And I think one of the things I actually worked through with my therapist was the forgiveness of myself. And it was interesting that you were talking about earlier, like I was like, do you think you'll ever forgive yourself? And I remember my therapist asking me that question a little while ago, and I didn't even realize that I was turning so much anger onto myself rather than actually letting that go. And when she said it to me, I had the same feedback that you had, that was like, that's an icky question. That's an uncomfortable question. But I think that's the great thing about therapy, that they make you question things that you might not, you might not question yourself. We are going to switch to business now. We're going to business side. Can we talk a little bit, because you've had quite an interesting career in terms of what you've been doing. We had a great conversation, which I don't know how we're going to reenact because I can't remember the questions I asked you, but we had a fantastic conversation around new business as well last time. So I'd love to go through whatever you can remember from when I threw this question at you last time, but the depth and wealth of your career and what we can take from that, and how new business is such a pivotal part of that now, and what advice we can give people. Broad. I'm just going to drop the mic there. You're up for the next half an hour.
That's a massive thing. Well, look, I mean, my career started in agencies, and I've done a lot of different things in agencies, from being a sort of junior planner buyer to sort of running offices and doing sort of chief commercial officer roles and stuff like that. and from that point bled out into consultancy, and a lot of that I was learning on the go, on the job, and again applying things that I had done wrong. To openly thinking about, God, yeah, I lost so many pitches when I was on the agency side. It was not funny, and I there's a whole heap of stuff that then when you get into the room seeing multiple agencies pitch, and then you see what the client says when they leave the room, it just gives you a very rich vein of understanding around.
Go into a bit more detail on that.
Well, it's everything. So when from a new business perspective, the analogy I would use is that when you're at the start of a pitch and there's 90, you've got 6 agencies all going into a chemistry, whatever it might be, all claiming to be a unicorn. The reality is that those agencies are all going to have 99% of what it takes to run that business, right? To pick up that account. Pitches turn on a dime like that. It's the 1%, really. It's a bit like elite sport. Formula One, take Formula One as an example, 20 drivers on a Formula One grid. All of them are world-class drivers. All of them have the capacity to drive a car around a circuit like no one else on earth, right? Only 1% of them even would win a race, let alone a championship, let alone multiple championships. It's that somewhere there's a 1%. And so finding that 1%, whoever you are, in whatever your agency is, like that little 1% comprises so many different things that an agency can look at, consider, think about when they're approaching a new business pitch. And I think a lot of agencies really don't know how to interrogate that, or simply don't think about it like that. And it leads to a lack of conviction. It leads to a lack of people being genuinely motivated in the room behind an agency proposition, and it starts to ring hollow. And before you know it, you've lost the audience before you've even begun. I'm forever, when I counsel agencies on this stuff, I'm forever telling them that of those 6, when you all have the chemistry session, when the client does the assessment, you either want to be number 1 or number 6 of 6. You either want to have completely nailed it and been the agency that they absolutely want to take through and is memorable, or you want to stay true to yourself, but it just wasn't a good fit. Being 6 of 6 is not about fucking up. No, being 6 of 6 is just about the fact that it takes 2, and there needs to be a fit between client and agency, but also between agency and client. And staying true to yourself is important in that. Once you get to sort of being, you're sort of 3rd or 4th out of 6, then it's like meh. They're the agencies that the client's like, I can't remember who they are. Who are they again? That's where you don't want to be. And articulating what that 1% is and bottling that and trying to make that come to life in a pitch can be a huge advantage, and it can really motivate your people as well.
Well, I think it comes down to what we've been talking about, authenticity, right? Like, do you actually believe in what you're selling? And do you believe in the people around you to deliver on that? Because I think that the big thing that I saw from my time in agency is we love to talk about ourselves, right? We love to show our shiny credentials that we've, had specially designed for this big event that we're going through. But we don't necessarily, we spend all night working and then we get up at 7 and we're in the office, and we're not necessarily doing what it says on the tin, which is building chemistry with our teammates and then with the client. And I feel like my biggest, because I now go into multiple different organizations and see under the hood of everything, and it's like you can have the shiniest deck in the world to go and present and sell something, but if you don't truly believe in it, you don't believe in the people around you, and you're not actually building chemistry with the people in the room, then just go home.
Honestly, it's partly the industry that we're in, but I'm like, pull off the plastic fantastic as a way, pull off the plastic brand face and talk as human beings. Clients are so often turned by power in a pitch room, by which I mean the conviction with which someone is able to articulate an idea, whether that idea is right or wrong. part of this is presentation skills, but frankly, it's about authenticity. It's about, God, this person really, they're not just selling at me. They're and ultimately, when you're looking for an agency partner, if you're a smart client, and not all clients are smart, let's be honest, but if you're a smart client, you want an agency who isn't just able to stand in front of you, but is also able to get behind you and be an advocate in your broader organisation, be with you on that journey. And that takes certain types of individuals, certain types of skill that sit well away from, yes, we've got a shiny deck, yes, we've got a great audience segmentation tool, yes, we're part of the biggest buying agency in the world, yes, we've won awards at Cannes, all of that kind of stuff. And I've seen clients be absolutely turned by that. Above and beyond. I'm forever advocating when I'm talking to clients, I do a lot behind the scenes in pitches that agencies won't necessarily see, but a lot of it is we're not looking for a silver bullet answer to this particular brief. We're looking for how the agency has applied themselves to it within the context of a pitch, and then we're looking for power, the strength in depth from a team perspective, the composition of how they all contributed, the ways in which they contributed, and the genuine, authentic nature that sits behind that. Because believe me, it's a tell. You could just like in dating, just like when you're dating a person, right? You know fairly quickly if this person is on the level or not. And I think that is, there's all sorts of things that bleed off that in terms of how a CEO might empower her people to be that, not script them too much. How people are allowed to live and breathe within their own sort of way of doing things, as well as the agency way of doing things. How you're able to show that client without telling them that you're there to mold yourself around them and be on that journey with them, not present them with point Z of a journey that they may only be at point B on, because that just scares the crap out of them and makes, and like, we don't need the whiz bang. We don't need a Ferrari. We just need a Toyota to get us to the shops and back. Well, great, we'll be that Toyota, but we want to work out a way to roadmap with you how we might get to somewhere else. That is that's treading that kind of assertiveness line of, look, we are who we are as a business. We would love to get you to where we think you need to go, but we recognise that your business might not be there yet, and we're here for you on that. That's like an often unspoken. It comes through in attitude and approach, and rather than just sort of telegraphing it on a chart. And all of that stuff, it fascinates me in new business. The psychology of it fascinates me. The authenticity and the integrity of it fascinates me from both sides of the fence, and the way pitches are run. And badly run pitches, or Trinity P3 does a state of the pitch every 6 months. Compars a state of the pitch and a survey about how agencies feel, and it's subjective. We take into account client run pitches, consultancy run pitches, and all points in between. And it's as frustrating as all hell to see those sort of marks out of 5, sort of constantly sort of sliding down, because agencies are often put in impossible positions, and there is an integrity to that I'm a big believer in, frankly. Despite the fact, we're running like 5% of the pitches that are out there, but it obviously, a good pitch process, it takes two to tank, to do that, and I think there's an integrity there too that is really, really important. And it comes down to positive versus negative pitching. And the positive pitch is where the client wants the problem at the end of having two agencies that it just can't choose between. They're both so great. That's positive pitching. Negative pitching is a client walking in with a sort of cynicism dial turned up to 11, trying to trip the agencies up so they're left with one least bad one. It's incredible how many nuances there are in a positive pitch versus a negative pitch, and how that all adds up for an agency at the end of the day.
Doesn't start.
I've gone way off tangent there. I'm sorry.
No. I love it. I used to head up new business, so
I know. I'm preaching to the converted.
No, I love it.
You know just as much about it as I do, but there's a responsibility in business to that, right? There's a responsibility of agency leaders to their own people, but also more generally in the industry. This is people's jobs we're talking about, particularly in challenging, economic climate, particularly the smaller agencies. They're cash flow businesses, Agencies have closed down before as a result of pitches going astray, and that's a horrible thing if a pitch hasn't been run well. You need to give the agency every chance. There is a huge integrity in that because it's people's livelihoods. So I take that pretty seriously. I apply myself to it as much as I can, both as a person and as a sort of professional. Because I think without that respect and without that integrity, neither client nor agency is set up for success.
Yeah, everyone talks about partnership, right? Extension of our team, you've got to get the foundations for that right. This was a side note, but when you said CEO, you said her instead of he, and I was absolutely buzzing. You said, like when people go, oh, doctor, he, or CEO, and there's like the stereotype, and you went, and then she did, and I was just like, just because of what this podcast is all about, I was like, I'm so glad you got that right. Know your audience.
Talking about myself, I'm the next CEO in this room, I'll tell you that much. I actually want to take a minute there and talk about that a little bit. Whilst we have so far to go still in certain areas of this industry, it has been hugely encouraged. I mean, the amount of female leadership there is in this industry now, and I'm talking about agencies, well, marketing too, but also particularly agencies, creative agencies, media agencies, digital agencies. I think there's been some amazing progress made in that space. I think we're still seeing a lot of tone deafness. I think we're still seeing boys' clubs. I think that the job's not done. But look at the role models that we've got, some of whom have been on this podcast. Look at the Katie Rigg-Smiths of this world. Look at the Amy Buchanans of this world. That those people are absolute trailblazers as far as I'm concerned in terms of being women who help other women and empower that cause, but do it objectively and do it with integrity, and not just do it as a box ticking exercise, but do it because they genuinely believe in helping other people up. I don't think all people are like that. I don't think all women are like that, frankly. But I think there's been brilliant strides made in that space, and I love the fact I can say her without it being a sort of tokenistic, because they are hers. There are lots of hers in this, CEOs in this business who are just smashing it, which is that can only be a good thing.
It's a perfect place to ask my final question, which is, who is your limitless woman that you want to celebrate? And I just want to also, while you're thinking about that, I couldn't agree with you more. The women in this industry, oh my God, they are phenomenal. I am in awe of the people that we've had on here, the people that I get to spend time with. I genuinely feel like, when you've got that feeling of, if I grow up to be like you, I'll be really fucking proud of myself. And to have so many role models and so many people to choose from in terms of she's incredible, learn this from her. And the support that this podcast has got, which is about women's self-belief, from all of those women rallying together and building an army of we're going to help women with self-belief. And it's not women versus men, it's me versus me, right? It's me, it's my self-doubt versus my self-belief, and how can I actually adopt that. And the way they're all everyone who's on the pod will send each other messages afterwards, oh my God, well done, thanks for being on there, this is what I learned from you. And the community that we're building is says everything you need to know, because it all goes on behind the scenes, there's those beautiful messages that I get and that they get around, this is how you've helped me. And I just wanted to take a moment to also just completely fangirl what you just said, because we are really blessed with the role models that we have, and I feel very, very lucky to be part of this industry.
Well, look, there's a few things I could say to that, but I do want to call out that I mean, I was scared coming on. I mean, I do a lot of podcasts. I was scared coming on this podcast because of the caliber of the guests that you've had. I do want to call out that the caliber of the guests you've had is largely due to your influence and power and role as a leader in this industry, right? You put yourself out there. I mean, you fangirl over other people. I think a lot of people fangirl over you, which is, me included, which is why you've attracted these huge names and me, and that's not false modesty, I really do say, these huge names and me to this podcast. So you should, take a moment to congratulate yourself as well, because I think you've done a lot. Maybe, I don't know, Chloe, you've done a lot more than maybe you realise to talk about some of these issues, bring some of these issues together. And I think some of these issues, I love that sort of, it's not women against men, it's me against me. Women against men is so reductive. Me versus me, though, does have echoes of intrinsic values that people have been brought up with that are patriarchal in nature. That's still not women against men. That's inbuilt ideology and inbuilt things that you end up being sort of, it just gets grained through. And I'm the same as a trans woman. I'm the same. I mean, I talk about growing up with, the holy trinity of repression. The organised religion, the patriarchy and society and the media, right? All of which had profound impact on me, and all of which sort of combined to perpetuate a heteronormative stereotype and a heteronormative status quo. And inherent in that is all sorts of things, including how women should be, how women are, how women, with the roles that women should have. And I'm going back in history now, obviously. It's not, this isn't, but these forces are still there. And I think women do still get affected by them and just even unconsciously. And you're bringing that to the surface and saying, no, fuck no, we should, sorry, my language, but, we should be talking about this openly, celebrating that, and it is limitless. And so, kudos to you.
Thank you.
Do you want to say that?
Thank you.
That was a very long way of saying it.
No, I love it. I love the passion. I love the passion. Every time we speak, I'm going to just one more thing before you tell me you're a limitless woman. Every time we speak, I set you some homework, and sometimes it's deliberately called homework, and sometimes I'm like, why don't you ever think about this? But this time I'm calling it homework. You just said that you like the me versus me. I want you to think about applying that concept to forgiving yourself, because the woman that sits before me, I'm so fucking proud of her, like genuinely so proud of her. And I want you to, I think that your mission and the thing that you're so passionate about in life is helping other people through this. I think that you feel like it's your calling to help other people be okay with being themselves. And I think if you're ever going to truly live to that potential and be everything that you want to be, you need to do the me versus me on forgiveness. And whatever journey you need to do, and we can cut this bit out of the podcast, we don't need to have this on air, but I say that as a friend, that journey for you is the next stage of stepping into your authenticity, because I promise you deserve that. Like, you genuinely deserve it.
Thank you. I mean, I'm very hard on myself generally. I do find it hard to forgive myself, and you're right to sort of push me on that. I also feel masking such a profound part of yourself for so long is hard. And I wish I could say that throughout that long period of time that I was, heroic and stoic and never let it show. That's not true. I mean, I'm a human being. I was holding a lot of pain, and that didn't always make me the best person to be around. It didn't always make me the best leader. It didn't always make me, I was, and no one really knew why, and even my parents were like, God, we always thought you had a massive shadow hanging over you. We didn't know why. Now we know. And that's, one of the reasons I say my authenticity is hard won is that, my inauthentic self, I have to forgive that person too. I learned a lot from that person, and I think I apply it now, both in the way that I am with people professionally and personally. But I do want to recognise that I've by no means perfect, and it is a large part to do with the fact that I didn't feel I could be myself, and I didn't feel I could articulate myself properly, and that goes way beyond clothes and appearance and stuff. That goes to emotional responses, being hugely worried about discovery and all of that kind of stuff. So I got to forgive myself for that too. So that's a work in, and I am, therapy. It's like my job's not done. I still need therapy. I've got to investigate that as well now, because I think I'm in the right space for that in my life.
You're ready
now. So that's something I'm actively sort of looking at the moment. God, I talk too much. My can I have two people? Is that all right?
Yeah, you go crazy.
I want to have one from the industry and one from outside of the industry. Outside of the industry, my trans superhero, my limitless woman, is Laverne Cox. For those of you who don't know Laverne Cox, she is an incredibly talented actor, astonishingly beautiful woman. I'm just in awe of her looks and her talent. Her breakout role was on Orange is the New Black. And she grew up as a person of colour, trans, and in a part of the States that, frankly makes my journey look like a piece of cake. I mean, that's hard. That's really hard. A lot of the privileges that I had, she just wouldn't have had. And she's turned into the most amazing, consistent advocate, just common sense advocate for trans people generally, where she could have just walked, taken the money and walked. She has consistently stayed real and stayed present, and I love her for that. And she's my first pick. Dialing right back into the industry, in terms of who I've worked with directly, I would call out Sarah Mazur, who, again, not everyone might not know Sarah, but she hired me at Mindshare back in the. She was my boss back in the day. I mean, we're going back nearly 20 years when I first got to Australia. But she had such integrity about her. She's since gone through unimaginably hard struggles of her own, which she's dealt with astonishing amount of grace and fortitude. But at the time, she taught me stuff that I wasn't actually ready to learn when I look back. It's only stuff that's occurred to me later about how to be as a professional, how to be as an individual, how to be with clients, professionally speaking. And her impact on me has lasted a long... And I've only sort of was thinking about that recently. And she now trains young people. She does training and development work for young people in the industry, and I couldn't think of a better person to be doing that sort of work. So that would be my other limitless woman.
Amazing. Thank you so much. Thank you for doing this twice.
You're welcome. It's a pleasure. We got to hang out again.
No, genuinely, thank you so much. I always learn something from talking to you, so thank you.
Thank you.